do judge a book by its cover. I also judge bottles of wine by their cover. Song of Achilles, Greek mythology, gay. I was in. So, in case you thought I only watched movies and TV, you would be wrong because today we are talking about books. I contain multitudes and I do read a little. I actually cuss a little. And more specifically, we will be talking about Madeline Miller's works, The Song of Achilles, and Circe. I have been in a bit, ever since Percy Jackson came out, I've been in a bit of a Greek mythology hyperfixation. This does revisit me about every year. On average, I can never tell you when exactly it'll be, or it really depends on my environment. And I do think that watching Percy Jackson kind of re-stoked the flame a little bit, and I was kind of in a halfway book club with some of my coworkers, and we were reading The Song of Achilles. I was rereading it. This is probably my fourth time, but I did want to give a little spotlight to the author, Madeline Miller, who I love. I wanted to talk about her because, okay, she's a genius. Actually, I think she might be a real genius. I bet her IQ is fucking crazy, but she has a Bachelor of Arts and a Master's of Arts in the classics, which, if I ever went back to school, I think I might achieve or attempt to achieve, because it's really the only thing I think I would remain interested in long enough to get a degree. But as you can tell, my interest does ebb and flow quite a bit, and it does depend on my environment and whether or not Percy Jackson came out. I wish I read more than I do, and I think that's how everybody feels. And it seems like, just like with movies and TV, I kind of go back to the same stuff. And it's really hard for me to branch out to new things, especially to new authors. But if it's about something I care about enough, then I'm game. Song of Achilles, Greek mythology, gay. I was in from the start. Didn't have to hook me. And then, of course, Circe, same author. Okay, I was already in the game. About witches, witchcraft, kind of spooky, and it's Greek mythology, and she turns people to animals. I was all the way locked in. Like she never even had to try. And now, the last I heard, she was also writing a book about Persephone. She said this in like 2021, and she took 10 years to write the Song of Achilles. 10 years, and you can really tell that she took her time, and it's just in the way that she writes it. It's so hard to explain. Circe took about 6 years, I believe. So hopefully Persephone doesn't take much longer, because I cannot wait to see how she writes the underworld and Hades and all the gods that are in that myth, like Demeter. I don't think she's wrote about her yet. And Hecate. Oh my God. The witch. The witch. She's the witch. She's the main witch. Can't wait to see how she's portrayed. And, Persephone herself. I mean, it's such a famous story, and it seems right up Madeline Miller's alley to write about. And I think she could keep on writing forever. I would keep reading, but I think that would be a very solid trilogy of books about Greek mythology. I know she also has a lot of interest in Shakespeare and taught Shakespeare for years. And that's not totally dissociated from Greek mythology itself, but the original Shakespeare like stories that he created. She was doing a retelling of The Tempest, but she put it on pause for Persephone, which I care more about anyway. Okay, so one of my favorite things about the way that she writes these books is how she interacts with the Greek language, but writes in English. So I tried to skim through and find an example of this, but she does it multiple times. So she might say, in English, of course, da 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 da, this word. And then the narrator would be like, he used this word. And then say the word in Greek and be like, it means this, or this is what it means. And this is the context behind that, or but it's all very natural, and it feels, and not only the language, but she uses just like the livelihood of what these people in ancient fictional Greece would have been like, depending on like the terrain and the area they lived in, what was available to them at the time, what they might have done with their spare time or when they were bored. She does a very good job of making it all feel very modern. It feels like it's written in a very modern way for such an ancient story to be retold. It makes it so easy to read. I really don't think that you would need any prior context to Greek mythology in a vacuum. If this was just a fictional world she made up with, and all the gods she made up in her own head, and it was just a story just completely from her brain, I think somebody could read that and not have any questions. You know, she says she brings up a lot of characters in Greek mythology, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's only important if it needs to be. If they're in the story and you need to know about them outside of their name, she will tell you. But if you don't, you know, you might just be struggling to read through so many of these goddamn names. How do you fucking say Minoetius? Is it Minoetius? This is Patroclus's father, which we're about to get into him. But there's so many of these, and it's like, oh my God, how were they going to say these? And it's like 100,000 of those in these books, but you just got to push through. You know, you hear like Zeus and Athena. It's like, great, you know, I can say that. And then you get to somebody who has every letter of the Greek alphabet in their name, and you're like, well, maybe I don't know. But it's only important if it needs to be, and I don't think you would struggle through it if you don't know much about Greek mythology. I think it is also an incredible place to learn about Greek mythology. You know, there's as much as you think you know, there's always so much more. This woman is a genius. A genius. There's the reason she has a master's in this shit, guys. So to start with the Song of Achilles, it basically tells the story from Patroclus's perspective. In the Iliad, he is heavily rumored or assumed to be Achilles' lover, which is like this big point of contention with history. But in the records of like the ancient Greeks and, you know, their arguments and talks with each other that were all recorded, that is how they perceived it, and I'm going to trust them more than some incel who just doesn't want it to be true. Also, Alexander the Great heavily related his life with his lover, Hephaestion, with Achilles and Patroclus. And I think he even believed that they might have been the reincarnations of them, of course. And they visited the tomb. They were buried together. I mean, there's a lot of evidence to say that they were probably lovers. And more than just besties in the war. But it takes place from his perspective, and it shows his life growing up with his king father. He's a prince who does not fuck with him at all, and basically he accidentally kills another boy and is sent to live with Achilles' father, who is also another king in another kingdom in Greece. So it's kind of about them growing up together, the evolution of their friendship and later lover relationship, up until the point of the beginning of the Trojan War. And it goes through all the way up until the Iliad, and when they both die. Spoiler alert, but I mean, the Iliad's been out for quite some time, so if you don't know that Achilles dies, now you do. And I'm not sorry about that, because media literacy is dying. But it's such a heartbreaking book. Oh my God. It's so sad. It really hooks you within the first few pages. The way she writes it, it's just like butter. I don't know. Like, you just slide right through. Patroclus is literally just a little guy, and you like Achilles. You love Achilles, like, for most of the book. And it's like the last few chapters of the book, and like when you get to the Iliad stuff, when Achilles is just making these horrible decisions, and you're like, why? Stop. Like, please don't do this. Like, this is all, like, you're undoing is yourself. Like, please quit this. Like, right now, you're ruining everything. But of course, you know, fate kind of demands that this happens. And I've never cried reading a book before, but on the last page, the first time I read this, I dropped a single tear on the last page. And that's probably the most poetic thing I've ever been a part of, personally. Achilles' mother is like a super minor, like, sea nymph. He's like barely a demigod, but she makes all these deals with Zeus, and he's basically the best demigod. I do believe that Heracles came before Achilles. So, I mean, I'm assuming that that means Achilles was better. He was like just the best fighter, super fast, super swift, like never made a mistake. I don't really know how to give a full book review, but I loved it. I mean, it's absolutely a 10 out of 10 for me. I've never connected to a one-off book like this so much. And I've read a few, but Circe is different. She does such a good job of writing from an immortal perspective, like somebody who just doesn't die. Like the way she describes like how time passes for her and these regular mortal people she interacts with is very interesting. And the regular, like how she interacts with like the Greek language that I was talking about earlier is also very apparent in this book as well. You know, in the first one, like I said, it really envelops you in the lives of the regular people in mythology. But now, from the perspective of a goddess, once again, she's the daughter of Helios in this myth, which is the Titan god of the sun before Apollo, and a sea nymph named Perse, Perse. In some myth, you know what? Actually, this could have just been a creation of Rick Riordan in the Percy Jackson series. But in his version of the story, she is the daughter of Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft. And I don't know if that is just an alternate myth or if that's just something that Rick came up with. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But I looked at his the Percy Jackson and the Olympians wiki page, and he says that Helios is her father and Hecate is her mother, which is kind of like a combination of the two versions of her myth, I believe, which I can rock with. You know, I was kind of under the impression from Percy Jackson that Circe was the daughter of Hecate. I knew that another version of her as the daughter of Helios existed. I just kind of liked that she was inherently attached to magic. So I wasn't the biggest fan initially reading this story about her being the daughter of Helios. But in the end, I think I liked it because she kind of just discovers witchcraft. And all of her other siblings do too. Like there's nothing inherent about, you know, the domains of their parents that necessarily relate to witchcraft. It's basically just a skill that she created herself. I mean, I wish that they had used Hecate in this story. I know that in myth, I don't think they ever really interacted, her and Hecate, but I would have loved if they had thrown her in there because she's such a compelling goddess. She's so cool. But in this story, you really get into the political workings of the gods. Like you have like the Titan gods, the ones who are still around after the Olympians defeated them. Then you have the regular Olympians. Like some of those show up throughout the story, and like the lesser gods, and like how they are always kind of like clout chasing with mortals and demigods and the regular gods, and like how the workings of that world go, which is very interesting because that's not something you can get from Patroclus's perspective as a regular person. I also think in Circe she had a bit more creative freedom than she did with the Song of Achilles. Obviously she did have some in that story that you can tell, but Circe, I mean, she's an immortal. Like she has an infinite life, and she's been around for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Before her exile to Aiaia, the island that she's stuck on, she is around certain gods. You know, she throws one of the Furies in there. She throws Prometheus. You know, when Prometheus was exiled to his punishment before he's sent to be tortured, she has a conversation with him. And the conversation she has with him is very apparent through the rest of the book. Like it's kind of formative for her. You know, she includes the bit where Jason and Medea with the Argonauts stop on her island. In this story, she also goes to Crete, and her sister is the queen of Crete giving birth to the Minotaur. So it kind of circles back to multiple myths, some that Circe was involved with in mythology and some that she wasn't. But just kind of to fill the gaps in this huge lifetime that she has, she gets the chance to interact more. She has more creative freedom to be like, you know what? We can put her in this myth. We can say that she was there or heard about this from someone else. It's really, there's a lot more characters from mythology in this book that you would recognize. I would say for Circe, I don't have the same connection that I have to the Song of Achilles. That book is like nothing else to me. But in certain ways, I like Circe more. Even though I think I love the Song of Achilles more. So for Circe, I would give it a 9.5. I'm really a Madeline Miller glazer. And if she doesn't come out with this Persephone book in the next year, I think I'm just going to delete myself from the earth. I think that would probably end up being a favorite of mine. And I trust in my heart that she's going to pull it off. Just because, oh my God, I cannot wait to see how she writes the underworld. I would read, if she did a retelling of every Greek myth, I would sit, and those would be the only books I would ever read for the rest of my life. I would feel like I'm cheating on Madeline Miller. And I would feel like I wouldn't like the writing of whoever else. But, you get so hungry, and I'm in this weird Greek mythology phase anyway. I really do need some new content about this stuff. I just wish that she would, I like that she takes her time, but I'm running out of it. Hurry up, please.